welcome to another episode of Growth Unplugged podcast. In the studios with me is a very experienced person from the battery industry. This is the most happening industry within manufacturing in the America space. I have with me Omkar Nadgauda, the Chief Operations Officer of N-Power. Welcome, Omkar.
Thank you, Nikhil.
Absolutely. All the folks who are going to be listening to this conversation, Omkar has vast experience in operations management, particularly in manufacturing. His experience goes from companies like Amazon, Schneider Electric, now to Npower, where he's leading the way when it comes to battery manufacturing operations. Omkar, why don't you tell us a little bit about what are some of the things that you do every day as a Chief Operations Officer at Npower? In general, what excites you about operations management?
I'll start with what I get excited about operations management. I think operations management, at the crux of it, gives us an immediate gratification of your decisions at a very fine level, right? You cannot hide from the results when you are into operations because it's not going to take time for you to figure out whether you did wrong or right. You just know within minutes, sometimes hours, if it's going to be great or you need to try something else. That challenges you to think on your feet, fail fast, and go towards the next steps. That's something that excites me. Empower right now phase we are in, my current job is to lead the team all across, including the board, get our product from R&D to the market as fast as possible.
Awesome. When I think of batteries, Omkar, it always used to just be that battery in the car. Nobody used to talk about it. All of a sudden, a few years ago, with climate becoming important, everybody started talking about battery and battery manufacturing. Could you just give an overview of why suddenly all this interest in batteries? What really is the battery manufacturing industry all about?
Nikhil, I just want to make sure our listeners are aware. The first electric car was built somewhere in 1930. If you go to Detroit and the Ford Museum, I think there is an electric car. It might not be 1930s, it might be 1940s, but it was way before the first car was built and it was never built again. You got more traction in 1970s that we need to start building electric cars. People tried different aspects of it, but nothing materialized. Now all of a sudden there was a transition based on the climate change philosophy where people started understanding that cars might be one of the top 10 factors that are affecting the climate change. How can we transition to something more sustainable, clean? That's where people started looking at alternatives to have electric cars. That tied with, especially in US, the fall of 2008 economy, people understood pretty quick that the next wave of economic strength is going to come from electric cars or green technologies. A lot of government initiatives were sent in US that were caught by a lot of companies. That's where we are seeing a lot of growth come from for the batteries and the electric cars.
If you see automotive, I generally see that there are OEMs who manufactures cars, commercial segment like trucks, and then you would have the RV segment. In battery, is it like all batteries just the same type, or is there some sort of a segmentation in the battery industry?
There is segmentation. At the crux of it, how the physics works in the battery is always going to be the same. There is segmentation when it comes to how big I can build a battery, how I can make the battery packs. Those segmentations in certain cases are well regimented through regulations across the government agencies. Example, if I need to have a battery in my car, it needs to pass a lot of safety tests. Whereas if I need a battery somewhere sitting in a farm, that's going to be an energy storage unit. It also has to pass certain safety tests, but it might not be as stringent. There are segments through it, there are regulations as to which market you are going to fit into. Then the market decides, Nikhil, if I need to have a battery pack that will give me power, but I don't really care about the energy, or a battery pack more about energy and I don't care about power. If you look at the automotive space right now, people are going more for energy because I need more energy to go long distance. If you go to applications such as drones, where I don't really need it to be 7 hours of runtime, I just need it to be 2 hours of runtime. When those 2 hours are coming, I need to have very high power so that I can move that drone faster. Then I need a power set. Cell design engineers and R&D and material specialists, that's their playground to understand how can they design a power cell versus energy cell, maybe a cell that is a balance between the two.
Would the battery that goes into our phones versus the battery that go into electric vehicles versus the battery that would go into a farm or drones, etc., if I'm hearing you right, the end application of the battery is the same, but from a manufacturing operations or even design standpoint, size or the application would pretty much decide and segment the whole industry. Would that be a fair understanding of what you're saying?
Yes, the market defines what's coming into it. They also define chemistries that we can use. There are certain chemistries that we cannot use for certain applications. We have to remove them from consideration and go for the different chemistries that we can use. The market defines it. Like I said, physics is the electrons going back and forth between cathode and anode.
If we focus a little bit about just battery manufacturing in general at a high level, how is the battery manufactured? Is it a lot of chemicals?
Yes, there are a lot of chemicals and there are a lot of rare earth metal put into the batteries. For the global audience, it's like a pancake. You have to make a batter and then you make a pancake. That's called electrode. Then you stack those electrodes on top of each other and add a chemical called electrolyte, which will activate the electrodes. Then you put it into formation where you are teaching it how to behave and how to work. Once you have that one single cell, you will put multiple cells into one battery pack. So if you go right now and you open the remote of your TV, you're going to find a AAA cell. That's
Correct.
one cell made out of wound electrodes. When you put multiple cells across and make a small pack, that's called a battery pack.
When I read, I also hear things like modules. A group of cells together, would that be called as a module?
Yes, so the modules and the packs sometimes are interchangeably used. One
Okay,
of them is where I use all these cells into a pack and then I will use multiple packs to make a module.
got it. The core is that I think you give a very nice analogy of our TV remotes. The
Yeah.
one cell essentially, and you making multiple of them depending on the size and putting it all together.
A lot of your 9-volt cells that go into your smoke detectors
Right?
are actually a pack of two cells.
Okay, okay.
If you open them up, there are two or three different distinct wounds that you will see inside.
Interesting, interesting. The core, I'm guessing, in battery for anybody to be excited about the industry, it's an interesting thing, right? It's a mix of chemistry from a science standpoint, but
Yes.
there's also a good amount of engineering getting attached to it. You mentioned rare materials. When I read the news, when I read about batteries, lithium generally comes a lot across, but is that the only material with which a battery is made, or there's something else too?
Yes, lithium is there, but then lithium has to be carried through nickel, cobalt, iron phosphate, or one of those characters. So those come through. You will always have aluminum and copper because those form the basis of electrodes. Then you have some salts based in electrolyte. There are a lot of like rare chemicals like that. On the anode side, you will have silicon, carbon, graphite, those kind of things.
Okay. I think US seems to be at a very interesting place when it comes to battery manufacturing. When I look at that whole belt from Chicago to almost Atlanta, the manufacturing activity and the amount of construction that is going on, just not battery, but manufacturing in general is huge. When I think of manufacturing, I'm always thinking, why would somebody choose to build everything in the US? What's the advantage? When it comes to battery manufacturing, post COVID, we saw that we want to be more resilient from a supply chain standpoint. Now, is there anything else that the government is helping progress manufacturing, in particular battery manufacturing here?
Absolutely, Nikhil. You're right. After COVID, the entire globe learned that we need to have a robust supply chain. That's where the word went from, I think it was friend shoring, right? Where you start buying stuff instead of buying it from the cheapest place, you are buying from people who align with your values as nations. That way, when conflicts arise, you can rely on them, right?
Interesting.
So that started there. But that's not the only thing. Batteries and lithium ion and green technology, no matter in what form, is the next step of energy. You always want to be energy independent of other countries. You
True.
need to have your own energy supply that is not affected by other people. That's why US is putting a lot of money and a lot of emphasis on making cells, making battery packs in house because US is realizing that this is going to be the next generation or the next level of energy supply. You want to make sure that your supply is within the US and not dependent on someone else. That along with the way the current military warfare is going on. The current defense systems have gone from man to unmanned. You have drones that are flying halfway across the globe, sitting somewhere in. It starts becoming more and more important. Those things are not flying with gas, those things are not flying with petrol, those things are flying with battery packs, those things are flying with cells. If you are going to depend on that, you need to have those things in house that you can manage and trust rather than getting them from outside. That is also another layer to it that's not as evident, but I think that's a lot more bigger layer as to why US wants self-reliance when it comes to green tech and green energy.
That's amazing. As you were telling that, Omkar, thinking, I've always been close to manufacturing. I always used to think about what's the purpose or what's the why behind manufacturing. Have you heard of Simon Sinek?
Always
Yeah,
start.
very excited when I read, and it came into
It's
my
a nice
mind.
book. It's a very nice book.
Correct. So I said, what is manufacturing's why? And I think you summed it up very well. Among all the manufacturing segments, if I see the history, I think automotive industry in the US particularly was very much associated with the purpose of passion, sports, more just to take the economy into the next decade or era. I think that's how the early 1900s were viewed. I see battery manufacturing, the way you connected it to the purpose of either the resiliency of the nation, if not basically just being energy independent and just adding more to the purpose of climate and doing your bit. I think these are very strong purposes that an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, or a 20-year-old especially would associate with. Omkar, for those guys, if somebody is just starting off, does not know a lot about manufacturing but is studying those pure sciences which get applied in the battery industry. You have studied all of that, right? If you had to go back to school today and you do it all over, what would you tell them? Hey, don't study it the traditional way, do it in a different way, and you will get more value. You will get more interested in those core sciences. Any thoughts from there on you?
Yes, but my thoughts are going to be a little bit different, right? I'm not a rage machine against traditional education system. I see their value and I will always encourage people to follow that.
Sure.
What I would recommend is not to get caught into grades. The goal is just to get higher grades. That is one of the goals, but the other goals also needs to be whatever I'm learning, can I apply that knowledge to make people's life better? At the end of the day, that's the value you are going to add to the society, and you will always get paid based on what value you are adding. I talk to a lot of young people and I tell them all the time, sun is very important for us, but if there is no medium, if radiation did not exist and sun's energy could not reach earth, it would be useless.
Sure.
Or the sun's energy is reaching us, but if chlorophyll didn't exist, it's useless to us, right? So it's very important to gain the knowledge and show the proficiency. That's where the grades come. Also, try to ask yourself every time when you are learning, where is its application in the real world? How I can use it. The more you go to the basic principles of physics, chemistry, math, biology, or sciences overall, you are going to start finding it's rare to make people's lives better. Once you do that, you are unstoppable. You'll always have a value in the market.
What kind of project comes to your mind if somebody would have to do something which would get them interested towards batteries or everything that is going on? If somebody had to do some application oriented project, could you give us an example?
Yes, I can definitely give an example. If you get a chance to directly interact with a battery manufacturer or work on a battery project, that's number one. That's going to be given. But other project that I would always recommend is anywhere where you can use data to solve a problem. In battery industry, we are generating so much data that if you have that capacity to look at data, try to analyze it, contextualize it, to recommend improvements based on it, and execute that improvement, you're always going to be in demand in any market, let alone the battery market.
Nice. So that's a good segue into some of the thoughts that I was having. On one side, you mentioned we need to become energy independent. Oil was basically that energy. I see that data is also becoming that new oil. From an operation standpoint in battery manufacturing, how complex is battery manufacturing, Omkar?
It is a little bit more complex than what people give respect to. That is why you see a lot of battery companies don't survive. People think that you can just throw money and people at it and the problems will resolve. It's not like that. At the core of it, it's still technology manufacturing and not simple manufacturing.
So it is
Right?
high tech.
It's a high tech manufacturing, it's not assembly.
Wow.
What happens is, because in the current world, in the current situation, batteries are attached to automotive. People think like you can make a battery just like you can make an automotive, which is an assembly line.
Right.
But it's not. It's a high tech technology that you need to have skill sets in, that you need to put in your work, effort, time, learn a lot of things, then you can be successful at that. I think that's something that people miss. That's why we are seeing a lot of issues in the battery world, to be honest with you.
Great. For somebody who doesn't understand a lot of manufacturing or even a lot of operations, but understand money, if I were to ask you in the operations world of battery, where would be the number one place? It is high tech and it's complex. If you don't do it right, where would you lose money? Which area? Is it going to be quality, people? What is it going to be?
I always think about this. Quality is always be number one, but quality is something that you will see. You cannot hide quality, right? It's like you have a cut on your hand, the blood is coming out, you are going to fix. The real money that goes away in this industry is waste in electrode area. The rare materials that we talked about are very expensive. Mistakes, when you lose them or when you waste some material, it does cost you a lot of money. That's where it is. The second thing, any manufacturing, you will see the labor inefficiency that comes from it.
Okay. Okay.
To me, that waste along with labor efficiency or labor inefficiency are like cancer that might be growing in your body and you will never see it until it has reached a point where you cannot come back from. I'm really sorry to give these negative examples, but these two examples really help people understand. Even though quality is number one, I will always see it. It's going to be in front of me. It's always going to be on top of my priority, and I will always try to solve it. That's not going to take me down unless there is a big problem. What's going to take me down is the unseen loss of money that's happening. If I don't focus on, I'm out.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan and follower of Shigeo Shingo. He's one of the initial guys who was instrumental in writing the Toyota production systems. One of his famous quotes, Omkar, is that the most dangerous waste, especially in manufacturing, is the waste that is invisible. You're echoing the same thoughts there. That's amazing. Where I wanted to take that discussion is this sounds like you can have a high tech environment, you can plan it and have automated systems. But ultimately, if that is leading to some sort of a wastage, whether it is material, etc., the after work, let us call it that, fix the whole thing now in terms of rework, you will lose a lot of money there. You'll also then end up putting a lot more labor because fixes are not automated. The initial design, what you did went and made a machine, that can be automated, but everything after that is you got to figure out a way yourself. Am I getting that
Absolutely.
right?
Yes, absolutely. That one, even the waste is going to cost you. It's not just the fix, it's the waste plus the fix.
When you mentioned basically that data was a good area, you mentioned electrodes are being manufactured. Any sort of data plugged in there which could monitor wastage, give you
Absolutely.
ways?
There is always going to be the data, right? You are going to have data, and now the advent of AI, and people like to throw that very into everyone's face like we are AI. Data is going to be there. You need people who understand what data to look at in what way. If you don't have that, then the advancement is not going to help. I will give an example for people who follow Formula One. The
Yeah,
cars are always getting better. The reason why the cars are getting better is because you have skilled drivers who are telling you what they want to see to make it better. If you don't have that driver, you won't know what to do with that technology.
absolutely.
That's how I look at it. There is a lot of high tech technology, there is a lot of analytic tools, there is a lot of analytic capacity in current day computation. Unless you have someone who understands how to use all of those, it's not really going to give you any results.
Do you see the org structure of general operations management teams changing because of how data has to be used? I'm coming from a way where if you see our typical manufacturing operational job structures have been, there's somebody like a CEO like you, then essentially they either have plant manager and a couple of supervisors, maintenance, and all the sub functions under operations reporting. Tell me a little as to how you are seeing that traditional structure changing because more and more data gets available. I think decision making, the way it used to happen, will change. What are some of your thoughts there on?
I think the structure is changing. It might be for different reasons than just data, but I'll go back to the data. The more data is available and the data can be brought from the machine to the computer screens, and the more we have analytic tools and people get power to have their own analytics done even before they open the screen. That means that my engineers are no more glorified data collectors. Now they can start making decisions faster. The more fast they can make decision, the more it frees up their time to go to the next step and start talking about innovation. That's where we are seeing the engineer's time now is getting freed up. Something that we used to need four engineers, maybe three can do the work. That is something we are seeing. As far as the structure goes, in battery industry at least, I cannot say it's a trend, but I have seen a couple of companies where the executives now want to be involved in a lot more deeper levels,
More hands on.
more hands on. That's going to be the key to success going forward.
I was reading somewhere, I think it was one of the Y Combinator sessions. Y Combinator is a startup body based out of California. Somebody was telling there that in future we're going to see billion-dollar companies probably managed by 4 or 5 people. At the core is pretty much going to be data that is available, where these couple of people are responsible for decision making only. It seems like you're echoing that's the trend that you also see on the operations side, where we all are headed. I used to collect data on the shop floor 15 years ago, doing time and motion studies, etc.
I did the spaghetti diagrams and the swim lane diagrams and had a stopwatch in my hand trying to time people. But the machines have changed, right? There were machines from 70s that didn't have data or that would have data, but you would need a network cable to go in and export it. Now you have machines and MES systems and SCADA systems where as soon as something happened on the floor, I can see that point on the graph going up or down. That's helping a lot. The drawback of that, Nikhil, I'm sure that you would like to talk about it. That's actually moving engineers away from the flow.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that. I see the reverse. People don't know. The analogy I can give you is when I talk to a CPA today, they're so much into data. A lot of people who come and intern with the CPA, they really don't know how to read the income statement and balance sheet. They cannot find the errors. And it seems like the same thing might be happening on the shop floor then.
Yes, the same thing is happening on the shop floor. If you go away from the action being an engineer, that starts hampering your innovation. The entire Western culture economy, capitalistic economy, is based on innovation. We live in a system where innovation is rewarded.
Absolutely.
If the engineers start getting away from the floor and you start hampering the innovation, you start losing your ground in a competitive market these days.
Omkar, I'm sure this is a problem you're seeing every day. What are some of the things that you're doing to address this challenge? How do you get people to get best of both worlds, where they get enough time on the shop floor, but at the same time, a 20-year-old does not really want to be for the next 4 years in a remote place. It's a reality. They would like to be doing something by sitting probably in Indiana plus downtown in a coffee shop.
Nikhil, this is where we have to be honest with ourselves that not all 20-year-olds are made for manufacturing.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, I don't expect my engineers to be on the floor every time. I'm lucky enough that my team, with all the tools that they have at their fingertips, like to be on the floor. So that problem I'm not seeing. Some of the things that we have done is some of our daily cadence, we do it on the floor. Some of our meetings are on the floor. Our morning meetings are not online. Our morning meetings are on the floor. We have divided them such that every process area has its own board. The entire support group, along with the people in that process, are standing right at that process reading the board.
I've always been fascinated about the simple Japanese culture principles in lean manufacturing that you and I have practiced for so many years. I think you brought in a very good analogy. The point you're bringing here is that even if we go ahead and adopt technology, I don't think we can go away from the principles of Gemba. Get up in the morning and go to the shop floor once, just see how it is happening.
It goes a lot of ways. So I like it. That's how we have managed so far. Once we start having the other side of the problem, we will work with that as well. So far, We have not faced it.
Okay. I want to go into the discussion that given that around data, there's so much happening on the AI side. How are you seeing AI as an area for your area of operations and in particular battery? Do you see applications and use cases and possibilities?
Absolutely. I do see AI as a possibility. We are using AI in certain ways right now. People need to be careful because there is a narrative around AI which is not true. The narrative is that's a golden pill for all your issues. I don't think that's the case. AI is a very strong tool. You need to have a formal training on how to use it to benefit your business on case by case basis. For example, AI can help me when it comes to numbers and probably process. When I try to go to the employee engagement, nothing is going to substitute face to face interaction with my employees.
I was listening to a podcast where what I learned on AI is on similar lines. Numbers where you don't have ethical decisions to make. I think there's a lot that can do, but the moment principles and ethics come in, if you have fed in data that has bias, you're going to get bias in your decision making.
Junk in, junk out.
Garbage in, garbage out.
So that's the
Correct. Just like our existing technologies, we refine and make it right. You're right. On the AI side, also, we'd have to make. How do you see, from an operation standpoint, the perception of AI? If we see the factory of the future, I see World Economic Forum talking about the lighthouse network where factories are getting highly automated, etc. From an operation standpoint, how do you see that future? Are you seeing it highly automated or more human centric automation as we go into the future?
certain sections are going to be automated and those
Mhm.
can be automated, right? You don't have to worry about it. There are going to be certain sections that you cannot automate. There will always be a human interaction with the machine that is needed. In cell manufacturing, when you make electrode, that cannot be automated. At least now you have to have the human interaction going on. If you and me right now go to the best cell manufacturing equipment company, we'll see the electrode manufacturing a lot of people. When you go to cell assembly, the amount of people will reduce, and when you go to formation, you will not see any people. There are always going to be those stages as to which part of the company can be fully automated and which cannot. Again, tool, if you understand how to use properly, can solve a lot of issues for you. That mentality needs to be there, that I'm going to use AI. AI is not going to use me.
Absolutely. I see some of them, unfortunately, when they are not applying their mind, they're just blindly copying what it is telling them to do. In fact, Google came up recently with an algorithm. I just found out if your website or anything, it is AI generated content, it has started giving you lower ranking.
I didn't know that.
Unless you go and actually humanize it, okay, this doesn't make sense, this does, you will not see it. We're getting into interesting times there. Omkar, I want to go back to leaders listening to this podcast in the last few minutes that we have here. What is the biggest challenge you are seeing in manufacturing leaders cross this bridge, right? This new wave, whether it is data, technology, AI, the way we manufacture, the way we do business, and the way we run manufacturing operations is changing. From your experience, what is the challenge you're seeing if somebody has to really cross the bridge today?
The challenge I'm seeing, Nikhil, is somebody who has to cross the bridge and come up or grow and probably come to COO in this field, in battery manufacturing or in manufacturing, is there is not a lot of chink in people's armors. That tells me that a lot of people are not trying. When you try a lot, you fail a lot. When you fail a lot, you have scars. Those are the ones that make you battle tested and ready to go and help you innovate further. I see a lot of people coming in who want to be at the leadership level but don't want to have those hard conversations, make those hard decisions. A person that is completely not agreeing with them, reach across and understand why they are not agreeing with them and come to a common step. When I don't see that, tells me that the ability to take a team forward is missing. At the end of the day, people can talk about data, about AI, about results. When it comes to operations or any other business, it's a people's world. How you engage with people, how you are talking with people goes a long way than any other thing that you will have. I think that's where I see a miss. People's ability to have that engagement. When I say engagement, I'm not talking about giving them free candy or ice cream. A lot of times, engagement also means telling a person that I did not like the job you did.
Hmm.
This is the expectations. This is the training that we are giving you to reach that expectations. That didn't happen. How can I help you?
Is it more because manufacturing pretty much previously was make to stock? Once you set the whole thing in motion, it was repeat. Now there's just so much changing every day. Am I understanding right? When you said they don't have a lot in the armor, are you pointing more towards that they're used to that kind of environment? Today's dynamics require you to be more up to speed where you're giving the work, reviewing that work. The reason you're doing that frequently because 1 month later it's going to be a little different than what it was. I don't think we've
Yes,
seen that in manufacturing 20 years ago, right?
the current feedback is important, but the other aspect of it is the generations have changed. It wasn't just that you set the machine in place and things will work out. In the olden days, people gave job security a lot more importance than how things would go at work. A lot of people got into habit of my way or the highway. The current generation that's coming to work want to feel their value. Be as a contributing factor of a team. Doesn't matter whether you are employee number one or your employee number 10,000 to be heard. That can only be achieved by people who are team players. You need to have that ability to reach out and say, I understand you disagree with me, but what is that you want?
I think I can do one entire episode separately with you on the scars that you would have got while crossing the bridge. In the interest of time, I'm sure at some point you would have
A
changed.
lot over the last 15 years. In the beginning of my working, I used to think that asking for help was a weakness. Now, when I look at my team, the person who asks for help the most, I look at them as the strongest. They are not going to let their ego come in a way to suffer, to make company suffer, but more importantly, to make themselves suffer.
That's very impactful.
I want that person always 100% and fresh. If they take it on themselves without asking for help and get burdened and burn out, everybody is suffering.
So true.
That is like a flip change that I have seen. And if you ask me, how does that materialize, or how can you tell that on the floor? I was in a habit where I would like to do my project on my own so that when I show it and it succeeds, I can grab entire credit.
Sure.
I have changed completely. I don't want the credit. I want the team to have the credit because I have understood the more team has credit, the more easier my work is.
Hmm.
On social media, people give this credit to Gandhi for saying, which was later on said by MLK, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go long, go with everyone else.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
that sums up what you're trying to say very well. Do you see leaders finding it hard to change their mindset about data and technology also?
Yes, leaders overall, what I've seen, it's very hard. It's a generational thing, though. It's not a leadership thing. There is a generation of leaders who have a hard time to raise their hand and say, I was thinking about this till yesterday, but now this data is showing me that I was wrong. Maybe we need to rethink what was going on. My generation and the younger generation are a lot more open to saying that, yeah, I said this, but now the data is telling me different, so we might have to see it different way. That is the biggest issue between business and politics, right? In politics, even if you see data that's contrary to your assumption, you cannot just go back because you have taken a stand. Fortunately, we are not in politics, we are in business. We can actually look at the data and say, maybe we were wrong.
Awesome. Well, if you were to tell a manufacturing leader today that they could do to upgrade them on this data and technology path, what are the three things you would say as bullet points?
Three things I would definitely say is don't go away from the floor. That's where innovation happens. That's where your value is. Second, always be open to ask for help. Throughout my experience, people ask me during interviews, do you like to help? My answer has always been, yes, I like to help. Does your team ask for help? That's the biggest issue. If you raise your hand, you will have 1,000 people ready to help you. That's just human nature. The problem is people do not want to raise their hand. The third thing I would always tell leaders in manufacturing is at the end of the day, it's people's business. You have to build your toolbox on how to engage with every single person in your company, whether it be janitor or CEO. Engage and work with them on a daily basis.
Sure. This is more specific to Empower and where you are at today. How are you engaging new talent? How are you roping them into your system? What are you looking out there from talent that you would say, hey, I'd like you to come and work with us in any form, right? Whether it's full time, internship, apprenticeship, doesn't matter. How do you engage and attract talent today?
Good question. Internally, we have some ties up with some universities. On the social media side, I think that's where the talent is. I think the days of Indeed are gone. The talent right now is on LinkedIn. We are part of certain consortiums and associations like Volta Foundation, where we have regular interaction with the base of the Volta Foundation. A lot of them are just battery related talents. That's our way of engaging with talent.
Amazing. Good to know. Omkar, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for joining this episode of Growth Unplugged.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thanks for having me.
Everybody listening to this podcast, I want to leave with some insights or a question more. The question for all of you is, if manufacturing is exciting to you, what about battery manufacturing can you find out, connect it to the purpose, whether it is climate or something else that matters to you? Think about it, and we'll see you at the next episode of Growth Unplugged.